Hello, and welcome to the Investor Guys Podcast, the ultimate podcast for serious real estate investors in the know. Join your host, Bill Barnett and Kevin Mills, as they share their expert insights, strategies, and tips to help you succeed in the world of real estate investing. Get ready to level up your investment game with the Investor Guys Podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Bill Barnett and Kevin Mills.
And we are back for another episode of Investor Guys Podcast. I'm Kevin Mills, and this is Bill Barnett. How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing great, sir. Welcome, everybody, to the Investor Guys Podcast and home of our website, investorguyspodcast.com. So today, we've done 4 shows on top markets. We're going to do that again today. We have looked at states for each of the last 4 shows. So we love places that you can start looking at. We went through Florida for an entire show. We went through Texas for an entire show. Today, we're going to go through a specific city that is near and dear to our heart. And Kevin has personal roots there. And so, Kev, let's introduce them to today's hot city, topic city, great investor city.
I feel like I need to flip a card. Cleveland for the win. Cleveland, Ohio. And if
that's correct.
If you have been in the investing game for any period of time, especially the last 10, 15, even 20 years, you have heard about Cleveland. You have probably heard horror stories. You've probably heard great things, but Cleveland is something that is on every investor's radar. It is in our ears. It's a bug in our ear. A lot of people don't go to Cleveland for the same reason they don't go to other markets. They don't understand what the investment strategy is. They don't understand the city. And I am going to be the first person to tell you, don't go into a market that you don't understand. Don't go into a market where you don't have a strong support system. Cleveland is one of those cities where if you know your strategy and you know what you're doing and where you're doing it, what parts of the city to purchase the properties and what types of properties to purchase for your strategy, Cleveland is a market that will give you 50% or better on your numbers. Now, I ran these numbers actually with Bill. Actually, Bill brought the numbers to me, and he had a math glitch somewhere. I don't know if he ever figured out where it was, but we ran the numbers, and saying 50%, I'll tell people you can get 40% just because I want to be super, super safe. But 50% really is a conservative number for the city of Cleveland as far as your annual ROI.
That's cash on cash.
Cash on cash. Now, I'm going to tell you the reasons why I like Cleveland, and it's not going to just be the return on investment. I grew up in Akron, Ohio, which is about 15, 20 minutes drive at most south of Cleveland. So those are those personal ties that I have to Northeast Ohio and that entire market. Cleveland was formed as a city in 1786. So for those of you history people, that's 10 years after the American Revolution started. That part of our nation was inhabited by settlers long before that, and by Indians for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Cleveland sits right on Lake Erie, which is one of our Great Lakes. It used to be the largest steel producing city in America. I think it is again. Pittsburgh sometimes gets close to that, but Pittsburgh has kind of gone a different direction. Largest steel producing city in America. It has a port that gets sea traffic from literally the Atlantic Ocean and the other Great Lakes. So if you're in Cleveland, you will see ships that come in from China, literally into the port or the harbor of Cleveland. You'll also see boats that come from Wisconsin that are loaded with rocks, of all things, to put into a boat because they bring them and they crush them and they turn them into iron ore. And when you drive through the valley in Cleveland at night, you will see the sky lit up because there are giant smokestacks with flames coming out of them because they have to generate that much heat in order to melt those rocks into steel. It's just a city that has a lot of history and has been around for a long time. And I'll get into that more as we get into our next segments. But what drives Cleveland originally was industry. And as our steel industry went to China and other places, we had that decay that we saw in Detroit, and pretty much everything is we call the Rust Belt, which is Milwaukee, just all those cities along the Great Lakes, Buffalo, that were dependent upon the steel industry. That steel industry has come back in part due to Donald Trump, but in part also due to efforts made by the state of Ohio and the city of Cleveland. Cleveland has also been one of those cities that realized if we have all of our eggs in the steel industry basket and something happens to the steel industry again, then we have no more eggs in our basket. So they have begun and are well into a diversification program where they are trying to attract different types of businesses to the city of Cleveland. So Cleveland has become a very tech savvy area, as has Pittsburgh. And the growth that we're seeing in Cleveland just over the last 5 or 6 years, and I've been investing in Cleveland for 30 plus years, but the growth that we're seeing in Cleveland as a whole over the last 5 or 6 years has been much more significant than I have seen it literally since I was a child in the 70s, when people would just flock into Cleveland from everywhere because they knew they could get a job. Now we're almost coming up on time for a break. Before I start another throw, we'll go ahead and take a break and cut this one a little bit short, and then we'll get into some other things that are a draw for Cleveland. And then last section, we'll talk about strategies that work for Cleveland that make it the place to invest. So we'll be back in a minute.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching the Investor Guys podcast.
Absolution X, limited editions, lifestyle apparel like none other. Get yours today at absolutionx.com.
Live the resort lifestyle every day with Cayman K. The perfect pieces for every wardrobe. Shop the entire Cayman K collection and find your favorites. Find all our styles at caymank.com.
reallykevin.com. Weekly recorded coaching sessions. Learn, grow, find resources, opportunities and more. You'll find it all at reallykevin.com.
About the Cuyahoga River.
And as you can tell, I've got Bill back, and we were talking about the Cuyahoga River just before he froze up on me. Cuyahoga River, for those of you who don't know, it does run into Cleveland. It was so polluted at one time that it would actually catch on fire. And most people know that it caught on fire one time. It actually caught on fire multiple different times. And I remember as a child being in Cleveland and actually seeing tourists throwing like lit matches and cigarettes into the river trying to catch it on fire. For whatever reason, I knew as a child that wasn't a good idea, but Cleveland has cleaned up a lot. Used to be we would not have gone in Lake Erie to go swimming. It was just a nasty place. Now it is the cleanest of the Great Lakes. When you go to Cleveland, if you've never been to Cleveland, this is a hard thing to imagine. When you stand on the shore of Lake Erie, you don't see the other side of it. It is massive. It looks like an ocean. There are waves. There are seashells on the beach. The only thing that would tell you that it isn't an ocean is if you tasted the water, you would see that it wasn't salt water. If you go in the water and you come back out of it, you don't have that crusty feeling like you would if you go into salt water. The flats, which was what I was getting to, is on the Cuyahoga River, where the Cuyahoga River comes from Lake Erie. It's the old warehouse district where the boats used to unload their cargo. And they've converted those into nightclubs. So you can literally take your own boat now. Doesn't have to be a big boat, but you can take your own boat, spend the day on the lake, and then come into the flats, hook your boat up, and have lunch, have dinner, do the nightclub thing, go bar hopping on your boat as long as you're not drinking too much. There's a Nautica stage on the river where you can actually sit in your boat and listen to bands perform live. A lot to do in Cleveland, I guess, is the point that I'm getting to.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, brother.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is in Cleveland. I forgot to restart my timer.
We're
There.
at a little over 2 minutes.
Yeah, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is there, as is the Science and Space Center, which is the big odd-looking building right next to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right there on the lake. Lots of things to do in Cleveland that cause people to want to come to Cleveland that are in that part of the country. Cleveland doesn't really show up on a whole lot of tourist brochures or anything else. In fact, a lot of people still consider it the mistake on the lake. If you've never been to Cleveland, though, you don't realize what there is in Cleveland to do. The good part also about Cleveland that I liked growing up in the area is you are less than 6 hours from Chicago. You're less than 6 hours from New York City. It is really more of an East Coast feel in Cleveland than a Midwestern feel. So when you go to Chicago, it definitely feels different than when you are in Cleveland. Little quick bit of trivia before we go into our break. Spider-Man was shot in Cleveland because it looks that much like New York City, but it was easier to get the permits and easier to shoot in Cleveland. So they shot Spider-Man in Cleveland and not in New York City. Let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll be back in a minute.
Thank you for watching the Investor Guys podcast.
Live the resort lifestyle every day with Cayman K. The perfect pieces for every wardrobe. Shop the entire Cayman K collection and find your favorites. Find all our styles at CaymanK.com.
Absolution X. Limited editions. Seek your absolution. Lifestyle apparel like no other. Only at absolutionx.com.
Get ready for power, for success, for solutions and answers. It's all in one place. www.reallykevin.com. Education, opportunities, coaching, and so much more.
All right. We're taking a trip down memory lane as far as Major League, and Bill actually pulled up a jacket that he had bought for his son a couple of years ago from Major League, which
Wahoo.
if you've watched the movie, you're familiar with its reference to Cleveland. Cleveland has Chief Wahoo, which the baseball, I guess, is a representation of that, the Charlie Sheen version, I suppose. What I wanted to get into in this segment was really the meat of why we invest in Cleveland. And it's not because it's a great place to visit and a great place to party. All those things help as far as a place to invest in, a place that we want to go to. Cleveland is a perfect place to invest for Section 8. We can pick up multifamilies in Cleveland for a song, and we can put Section 8 tenants into these properties and cash flow at that 50% or greater that I was talking about at the beginning of the show. These properties are not difficult to find. There is not a shortage of these properties. As many investors have their sights set on Cleveland, a lot of people think that because of that, there would be a shortage of properties, supply and demand issue. I'm actually going to defer because I've been in this market for a long time. I'm going to defer to Bill, who's just started looking in Cleveland. Now, there's a couple of things that you've noticed as far as inventory goes in Cleveland. First question I'm going to ask you is, have you noticed a shortage of inventory?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. There's always inventory. Since I've been looking and making offers, there's inventory available, and that's cool. That's which is always not the case in some hot markets. Not the case for Cleveland. There is inventory available.
Second question I was going to ask is days on market. When you see a good deal, how long have you noticed it sitting around on market?
Not real long. When you see a nice piece of inventory, and this is true in most any hot market, when you see a good piece of inventory, days on market, it's pretty short. And in Cleveland, because of the pricing and because of the rental structure there and how profitable a market it is to invest in on a buy and hold basis, those good hot properties move pretty doggone quick when you decide to sell them, or when you and I are looking at buying. When we see a good one, you need to be ready to move on it.
No, which the point I was getting to it, that in and of itself is an indicator of the demand for the property in that area. Now, even though even though the properties have been moving that fast in Cleveland and have been for decades, okay, what we're not seeing happen is we're not seeing the price of properties increase a lot. So in the roughly 35 years that I've been investing in the Cleveland market, uh, the price that I am paying now is not that much different than what I was paying 10 years ago, 15 years ago, even 20 years ago. And I don't see the price going up significantly, even in the near future in the Cleveland market. So to give you an idea, and this is going to blow a lot of people's minds, especially if they come from markets like New York or from Cleveland or from Illinois or Chicago, $50,000 in the city of Cleveland will get you a duplex that might need a coat of paint in order to make it available to renters. And I'm talking $50,000 would be your cash purchase price. That means if you're putting down 20%, you're paying 10 grand. So your cash on cash return every year is $5,000 plus. Now, 5,000 may not sound like a lot, but when you consider you're purchasing these properties for $50,000 and the amount of properties that you could put into your portfolio, you're not going to look at the cash you're making in this situation. You're looking at the percentage of your return, because you're not going to be able to get that return in another market. I mean, there's other markets that have that, but you're not going to be able to get it as easily in another market, and certainly not in places like California, New York, and many other states. The other thing is Cleveland has a, what's that?
Let me interject right there. I don't want anybody to miss that, because you might have heard $5,000 cash flow, $50,000 purchase and thought, oh, gee, no, Kevin, that's 10%. No, when you have a 20% down payment on a $50,000 property, that's $10,000 that's being invested. If you get a $5,000 return and your cash out of your pocket is 10 grand, that's a 50% per year return. And then as Kevin knows, I like doing that on borrowed money. And so when you got zero out of pocket and you're pulling in 50%, the return rate is nuts. It's incalculable. But you
and we did a show on that you guys should look for as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just didn't want that to slip by. I didn't want anybody to just hear 50% purchase, $5,000 cash flow. Oh, wait, that's 10%. No. Cash on cash, 50%.
Yeah. And ironically, a lot of people who are in California are excited about getting deals that are 10%. So even if they looked at it that way, if they're paying cash for this thing, they're getting a 10% return on investment by paying cash. You're still talking about a huge return on investment that you're not going to get other places. But yeah, it is a 50% return on investment on your cash investment that you're putting into it. And again, like I said, $5,000 a year may not sound like a lot, but when you're talking about 10 doors, you're talking about 50 grand a year. When you're talking about 20 units that you could be literally purchasing for what you have in your IRA, you're talking about a great income compared to what anybody else is earning just from your passive income coming from an investment. So $5,000 may not seem like a lot, but like I said, when you look at it as a percentage return on your investment, it is a significant return. What I was getting to before we went off track a little bit was it is a very friendly rental market. That is, there is a shortage in every metropolitan market for Section 8. Cleveland is no exception to that. And because Cleveland is the birthplace of public housing, they have got it down to a science. The Section 8, which is the HUD housing department in Cleveland, actually does meetings on a regular basis, monthly basis, with owners of Section 8 properties and property managers for Section 8 properties. And they are asking us what they need to do or what they can do or what we can do for them to make the process better, to make everybody more comfortable, to make everybody more profitable. And when you have a situation like that coming from the government, it just makes it that much better and that much easier to invest in that market. Now, it's hard for me to talk. What's that?
It's break time. Let's take a quick break.
Actually, I think that's it.
And,
We're done with the show. This is our third segment.
sorry about that.
No worries. Long and short of it is,
wrap, it's not break.
yeah, it's a wrap.
It's a
There's
great.
no way we could talk about Cleveland enough in
Yep.
one show. And
it's a great market. It's a cash flow market. Every market has a unique identity for it. And when you're looking at rental property, you're all about cash flow. This is a cash flow market. It's not an appreciation market. But if you look at long-term wealth, cash flow is going to be a key component to that. And Cleveland's going to be a key component for cash flow.
right. And again, buyers events is one of my favorite places to do a buyers event because I have family there. I've got a personal connection. We have a great time when we go to Cleveland. Buyers events to Cleveland. Check out our website, investorguyspodcast.com. We actually have one coming up at the very tail end of 2020, and we'll have more in 2021. Bill, thanks again for doing this with me. As always, I enjoy having your company. I will talk to you probably sooner rather than later. Have a great day. And
thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Investor Guys podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Investor Guys podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and stay updated on the latest trends and insights in the world of real estate investing. Also, don't forget to check us out and see all of our episodes at theinvestorguyspodcast.com. Email us, contact@investorguyspodcast.com. Remember, the key to financial success lies in staying informed and taking action. Stay tuned for our next episode, and until then, happy investing.